Hello and welcome to episode 4 of 60 Minutes or Less, a new podcast from Birthday Cake for Breakfast. I'm Andy Hughes and I am particularly stoked to say that our guest this time around is Jonathan Higgs, vocalist, guitarist and more in Everything Everything. Art rockers with a knack for hitting you in the feels 1 minute and getting you up on your feet dancing the next. Alongside Dutch Uncles, Everything Everything have been one of our favourite northern institutions over the past decade or so, an outfit we've been lucky enough to catch live in venues both vast and intimate over the years and whose records we can never get enough of. Over the course of 15 plus years together, the band have had 5 albums reach the top 10 in the UK chart. At the start of March 2024, Everything Everything released their 7th album, Mountainhead, featuring the single Cold Reactor, which has been their biggest radio hit to date. Is a top 10 position on the cards this time around? I have personally been hammering their new record, so I'd certainly hope so. A week before Everything Everything were due to launch Mountainhead at Stockport Plaza, I caught up with Jonathan over Zoom to talk about the new record, utilising AI, and bothering the charts with Taylor Swift. Full context, the entire chat was recorded whilst Jonathan was wearing a little chef hat emoji atop his head. More on that later. For now, enjoy this latest episode and get out and grab a copy of Mountainhead this week. Where do we find you other than, this won't be going out as a video, but other than in this cosmos that you're in with your background and your chef's hat, where do we find you? And
I'm in my basement at home in Stockport in darkness.
Yeah, I saw the other day, because I'm not too fussed about having, these podcast videos where you're watching someone talking on their, from their front room or what have you. And it looked like you were in a bunker when we saw you last. So that's pretty much the
I think I just decided to change the background after I'd done about 40 of those in the bunker. Thought, let's get somewhere more exotic.
So by this time next week, you will have played Stockport Plaza, or at least you'll be prepping for Stockport Plaza.
No, it's you're right. It is a week.
Yeah, so I suppose at this point, unless it's a matinee, you'll be backstage and etc. I can only imagine Peter Sen was, a highlight, as he always is. At the time of speaking, though, as we've just said, you're still a week away. The venue seems perfect. For you, it's current home by the sounds of it. But I would imagine that Stockport's a bit overlooked for this type of occasion.
It certainly is.
Yeah. Are you quite excited to have it for the launch?
Definitely. I think it's a really nice thing to do. I've been living here a couple of years now, maybe 3 years, and they're doing their absolute best to revitalize this town. So launching the album from the Plaza, which is a pretty cool venue, is really nice. It hasn't really changed in like 80 years or something. So it's got this amazing feel when you walk in there, it's kind of like The Shining, basically. It's like the Overlook Hotel.
Have they got like lobby lifts and things like that?
Yeah, and everything's sort of Art Deco style.
Yeah.
And we went to an organ morning there a few weeks ago where just these old geezers come in and play these little look like end of the pier organs, and all the grannies there with their cups of tea, just listening to this jolly music. It's really surreal that it's still going on in just exactly the same way it always was.
Do you think there's much crossover in these organ mornings with people next week for this launch? Do you think there's going to be much?
I hope some of them come to both. Not just the hipsters that go to that, but some of the grannies that come to this. But I don't know. It is very strange to be playing the Plaza, but it's literally about 5-minute walk from my house, so it's doubly strange because my face is obviously on the wall and it has been all month, and I'm just walking past it every day and go, oh yeah, I guess I am playing in there.
Yeah, and the people who work at Tesco are like, oh, it's that bloke who.
Yeah, probably.
So you're playing with Dutch Uncles as well. And I remember around the time of Big Balloon that they were dressing as an ensemble. And they've kind of, been doing that.
A brief window where they where they bothered.
The costumes, and then they were like, that's it now.
Yeah.
Whereas yourselves, you've been dabbling in this for donkeys now. So
strictly.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever performed with that. Maybe once for like some kind of live session or something.
It seems to be very much, like a cool, every time there's a different album come out, there's something different in terms of costumes. And there was that great time around Get to Heaven where when you played the Apollo, you had that person come out wearing the costume. It was just giving it away.
Oh, yeah.
And And I know you're all now icy blonde up top.
Well, we're
How?
not actually anymore. Just me left. The other guys, it's all grown out.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they didn't keep it for the tour. They just did it for the day of promo that we did. But I'm still there.
I mean, well, that's good at least. But I mean, is there much thinking behind the outfit choices and the aesthetics of the group? Obviously, by the sounds of it.
Um, sometimes it's just something we can all agree on, just to get it over the line, that we
Hmm.
don't look too stupid in. Sometimes there's more thought. Obviously, around Get to Heaven, I was trying to look like a sort of crackpot dictator. So I had that sort of Hitler-esque fringe, and we were looking at pictures of Gaddafi and stuff like this because he dresses like a fucking psycho, because understandably. And so I had this cape, and I wanted to look like a ridiculous dictator, a madman. And that really worked. But then, Raw Data Feel, we were just basically none of us could be asked. So it was just like, right, let's just all wear white and just try and get that over the line. With this, it was I bought a Japanese jacket. It's like a cardboard box worker or something,
Hmm.
and we just all thought it looked cool, and we knew that there were loads more of these jackets in this place, so we just went and bought them all. But there isn't a great deal more thought. We like the idea of it being looking like we're going to work rather than just trying to look as cool as possible, which is what all bands do. We like the even if we don't look that cool, we look like we're doing a service or something, like we have to do it or something like that. But there's not. I think I think if we got too into it, it would become a bit. It would get in the way of the music. I think it's a
Hmm.
way of forgetting about us as people and being more about, oh, these guys are a group that make this sound, rather than there's the special one and there's the kooky one and there's the hot one and all this bollocks that you get when everyone's got their own style. This is more like, no, they're just them and they're doing their job, which I really like.
Hmm. I bet on some forums and Twitter profiles for like, everything diehards, though, they do have he's the kooky one and he's the
Oh, of
cute.
course. And
Yeah.
there is a slight that isn't strictly true, because I do sometimes wear something different to the other guys, and I
Hmm.
do sometimes stand out on purpose, and it doesn't hurt that idea that we're at work. It's more like I'm the leader of the guys at work. It depends
Sympathize.
on what we're doing. Sometimes it really works for me to look like a crackpot or whatever. Sometimes I need to just look like everyone.
Yeah. I suppose I love that Gaddafi comment, by the way. That's crazy.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
suppose it's a fine line to tread, isn't it? It's very like it's almost like a Devo type thing of
Yeah, I mean, bands have done it. A million bands have done it before. It's Talking Heads, Beastie Boys, Devo, everyone, Slipknot. I mean, they took it quite far, but just the boiler suit, it just removes any questions from your mind when you're dressing for the shits for the stage for the tour. It's like, obviously we're going to wear the same boiler suit every night. Bam, done. You don't have to worry about it. We don't have to look like we're all fit together, because we're obviously it's gonna work together because we're all wearing the same shit. And I think it looks good. I think it looks cool.
it's definitely a cool visual. And I think like you say, these bands that have had like the boiler suits over the years, it's
Hmm.
definitely it just looks there's something about it, isn't there, that looks
Definitely,
appealing.
yeah, yeah. And I'm glad we cemented ourselves as that's the thing we do. Like, it's no question. We've done it for every record.
In terms of that, I mean, visuals have always been, a part of the band, and artwork has always been particularly striking, I'd say. Get to Heaven was possibly our favorite record sleeve that you've had. Like Raw Data Field was a bit different to that visually, and they've always taken on like a different vibe, really. For the new record, what was the story in terms of the artwork with that?
That was talking to the artist we know, and I said to him, I want a guy who has a mountain for a head. Can you make that, please? And he made a few different ones, and we sort of went from there, narrowing it down. What, should he be wearing a suit? Should he be wearing nothing, etc., etc. Little details, but the idea was always, how simple can this be? I want a guy who has a mountain for a head. Upside down mountain kind of worked because it felt like a upside down sort of dark mountain, but super super simple. Just want to make a striking image with a striking idea. It's all about trying to get a strong, simple idea now. Everything in terms of the way I think about what we do. It's trying to decrease rather than increase ideas, trying to get like pare them down to what's the strongest, simplest thing we can do.
What do you think's brought that on? I mean, a lot of bands do that, don't they? Where, well, not a lot of bands, but certain bands do that where they get to a point where they say, we've done this, and now we want to, like drummers might decrease their kit or what have you to see
Hmm.
how much they can get from like minimalizing things. What do you think's gone into that, for yourself and possibly the others?
Um, I think you s- you learn to appreciate the strength of simplicity. Like it's so easy when if you've got a band where people are good at playing their instruments and there's lots of ideas flying about, it's really easy to just play all over everything and cover up everything with detail and impressive playing. And I do
Mm.
still have a place for that in my heart, but I feel like the hardest, I guess a lot of what we do is trying to do the hardest thing, which is a strange goal, I suppose, but it keeps us interested. And that's slowly become the pursuit of writing a perfect, simple song that anyone could play that is devastatingly affecting, in whatever direction. It could be the most exciting song you've ever heard, could be the most sad song, etc., etc. And doing that in a way that isn't shit and like simplified and childish, but it's actually amazing, but it's also simple. That's like the holy grail of art. And it's everything else is easier to do than that. So writing a really complex, overstuffed record is by far the easiest thing for us to do because that's what we've always done and that's what we do easily. So yeah, it's all about trying to like if you can have the same effect with two chords that someone can have with 80, then I'm going to choose the two chord one and I'm going to try and pursue that. It's really hard.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose even harder, like you say, is trying to make it not shit, which
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Because there's loads of really simple art in the world that I think is shit and we all think is shit. But then there's something that's simple and incredible, and those are like the holy shit moments.
mm, it's interesting that as well. I mean, it kind of feeds into something I read or heard about you guys recently, that you yourself have kind of shifted more towards the songs themselves and the melodies
Mm.
and the lyrics. And you've kind of almost said, I'll let Alex focus on the production side of things and how
Yeah,
particular everything should sound. And you yourself just want to focus on the song. And,
yeah,
what do you think's done that shift as well? Is that a similar thing in terms of, getting so lost in the song and saying, I don't actually mind how it sounds as
yeah.
such?
It's a similar thing. I feel like if I can write a song that's so good, then it should be sort of bulletproof, and you can throw anything at it, and the
Mm,
song will sort of survive. I'm not saying that I write songs and Alex throws stuff at them and they survive the process. He enhances them, but I'm not on a quest to find the new sound as much as he is. I'm happy with just two sounds, I'm happy with just hand claps and a bird singing or whatever, as long as there's a good song happening. Maybe that'll change. Maybe I'll get back into production stuff. And I do love the way music sounds and all the things that we get up to. But in terms of the importance, it's like vastly outstrips production is song. And he would probably agree. He would probably say, of course, the song is number one. Of course it is.
mm.
And I'm very glad that he is on a quest for the new sound in the way he is. We'd probably be shit if it was just me.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously working as well. I mean, I read that Cold Reactor has been the biggest radio hit you've had in
Yeah.
15 years together. And the new material itself seems to be received pretty well.
Yep.
So, how is that to be able as well to say, we're doing it like this and it's still
Yeah.
being as well as elevating, to a point.
It's surprising. The success of that song has been definitely very surprising to us. And it's really nice to have that new lease of life this far on because you would expect a band on their seventh album to be not on Radio 1, you know. I turn
Mm.
40 next week, and here I am literally playlisted. So yeah, that's just amazing. It's not something we take for granted, and it's not something that we aimed for specifically. Like Cold Reactor's pretty nuts in terms of
Mm.
its commercial appeal. It doesn't, the chorus doesn't rhyme. It has all these words in it. There's no repetition really.
Mm.
And it's about this ridiculous fantasy world. I guess musically it's more conservative, but we're delivering this sort of Trojan horse of ideas and stuff through the doors on the back of a pop tune. It feels like the good old days. That's what we used to do.
Yeah, I mean, I always, when people damn bands for being possibly, filtered through where they've got someone else behind them, or they've got money backing or
Mm,
whatever. But even
yeah.
if even if they're still like that, and the songs are fucking great, and they are pushing through ideas that are, I'm not saying this about you guys, obviously, but like, even though they are possibly from a certain background or what have you, I think it's great that you can still have in the charts these fucking crazy songs that are written by admittedly posh kids.
Hmm.
Like you go to see like some band like Black Midi or what have you, and they're doing these mad math rock songs to
Yeah.
huge audiences, and it's like, even if they have come from where they've come from, it's
Yeah, yeah,
still pretty mad that they're where
yeah.
they are. And in terms of the song we were just talking about, and like the crazy ideas, I love that. The stuff about sending a little sad little
Hmm.
yellow emoji face to someone when you're feeling that way, and everything around you is the way it is. Much in the same way of sending a lol or being straight faced while you're pissing yourself laughing
Yes.
emoji to someone. Do you think there has been like kind of a change in communication and stuff to where, even though things can be so open, that people are so locked up in respect of feelings and such?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of people out there who are living quite isolated lives that they may be connected digitally more than ever in history, but their human interactions are down to, you know, very few.
Hmm.
And that has an effect on us. We're not really sure what it is yet. But yeah, certainly the pandemic was kind of speeded all of that up massively, and it meant that everyone had to live like that. And some people still are, some people were beforehand, but a lot of people sort of haven't come out of that bubble that was created. And so that, yeah, Cold Reactor, I think has resonated with people because a lot of people know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying I haven't left the house. And I make it stupid by saying, 30,000 days. But that's also roughly a lifespan is 30,000 days. So it's a sort of cute way of saying I've never left the house, and sending an emoji and being a cold reactor, just as you described, is kind of the core sad tragedy at the heart of this song that sounds like a just a feel good time. But really, I think a lot of people have latched onto the lyrics, not so much the stuff about the mountain, but about the isolation. That's what's actually been the success of it.
Hmm. And I mean, the mountain itself. Obviously, there is a concept to the record,
Hmm.
and you've talked about it before a lot, I'm sure. As you
Yeah.
said, you've done like 50 odd of these or what have you. And it's about, like it's kind of on the nose in that it's about an alternate society where
Yep.
people on the lower rungs of society are working towards elevating people who are at the top and what have you. I imagine people are taken to that as well, and it's
Yeah, definitely. It's simple enough for people to get right away without feeling like it's just really stupid, but it's also there's enough depth to it to be affecting, I think. And there's a lot of just by describing a world where people are striving towards something that they never really get to see, and they don't really know why they're doing it sometimes. I think that also really resonates because it is how most of us live was in this system that never really brings the reward that it's supposed to. And even if it does, it's a sort of hollow reward. And we're living more and more in the dark, which is what I wanted to get the idea across with this pit was that we are living indoors and we're living through symbols and the humanity of us is is changing into something very strange and
Mm.
new, and it's worth commenting on, really, even if it's in this abstract way.
It's still getting across to people, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's not like an alien concept, and it's nothing difficult to grasp. There's a big old mountain, and everyone has to build it, and it must keep growing, and everyone has to live in a hole while it's being made. And there's no guarantee of anything. And
Mm.
a lot of people don't really understand why they have to build this mountain, why we must keep growing, why the line must go up, why we must keep expanding, because it's you don't get a tangible benefit from it.
Mm. And in terms of themes and structures for records, do you do you feel like this that's help it's is helpful for when you're putting a record out and you're writing? Do you think it's helpful to have a structure like that, or
Yeah, I like it because it gives me basis to start from. If I didn't have that there, I'd be saying to you right now, yeah, it's a load of songs about my feelings about living in the 21st century, and the songs might not even be any different.
mm,
But because I've introduced this big metaphor, everything can hang off it and everything can sort of be done under the shadow of the mountain, as it were. And if you go into the record knowing this idea, and some of the songs early on really do lay it out for you,
mm,
then it should sort of color everything without being overbearing. And it's not a question of like having to learn characters' names and having to work out how the narrative works. It's just a big, simple color palette, really, that affects everything, and it gives you, right, this is where he's starting from. This is the world, which is basically just our world, but my angle is, what the fuck are we doing, and why is everybody suffering if this is
mm,
apparently so great? So making a seemingly absurd focus of it, which is the building of a mountain, instantly sort of puts you in the mindset of like, well, this is a bit absurd. What is this system? So it's a shortcut, really, to get you on board with me before I even open my mouth.
mm. And I think, like you say, with the the first few tunes, it's almost like you remember those books you used to have where you'd have like a guide when you open the book and it
Yeah,
showed you like a map of the, and that's like a good way of, I think it's really quite great, really, how you can have that there for people. Like you say, they don't need to focus on it as such, but it's there and they know the overall
exactly. And it
sense.
doesn't get in the way of the music at all. You could listen to the album and never pick up on any of this stuff. It's not even mentioned that many times, but it's very helpful in situations where I'm trying to explain my worldview in a short, simple way, which is again what we were talking about earlier. How few words can I use to impart something powerful to you?
Hmm. You mentioned just as well, you don't need to know characters' names.
Hmm.
And I know that with this new record, you've said previously that you've stopped, not so much stopped, but this time around, there's no mention of the types of, Jennifer or Kevin,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
even visually, there's no Fatbergs and what have you, like from Reanimator. I personally loved Kevin's, reappearance when he showed up on Cut Up from the last record because I just thought, oh,
yeah.
Kevin as well. How much of this was conscious to say, oh, actually, we're not going to do that character thing this time around?
Oh, yeah, it was very conscious because I mean we had songs called Kevin's Car and songs called Jennifer, and I really did it a lot on Raw Data Feel on purpose. It was using proxies to talk about traumatic stuff. That was kind of part of what that album was for and what it was about. And I thought, well, I've really done that now, and I don't want another raft of random ass names. I'm going to try and do it with none. But as someone pointed out, I did name the big snake that lives in the pit. So I fucked up there.
Who happens to just be called Kevin, funnily enough, yeah.
Well, yeah, I wish.
I would like that. I mean, I appreciate that, what's the case, but I would think it would be great if, like every band had at some point during an album, they'd just be like, oh, and Kevin did this, and you'd be like, oh, that's
Well,
the,
the great thing about Raw Data Feel is that I at any time I can check back in with Kevin in some future song, and if people will love it.
yeah.
And I've been very cagey about what I think happened to Kevin. So it's always there if I want it to be. But really, all of these things are proxies for me or people I know or imagined versions of myself. So it's really, you're always just checking in with me when you hear these things.
I thought it was interesting to know in saying that you also try to include themes of money or commerce in every song.
Yeah,
Uh,
everyone. I tried to.
yeah, and obviously there's some that are obvious, like it's all about the Benjamins from the
Yes,
end of
certainly.
September, and then there's even though you've got the big reptile in the hole in Mad Stone, could kind of say it was kind of like in Get to Heaven with the reptile aspect in that. Are there some other touchstones that you return to when you are, making records other than money and commerce and what have you?
Well, with this one, I tried to put electricity or money in every song. I think electricity got in there a good few times. And things like I can sell you a fire hose, for example. I can make it a business. That's all the same thing I'm trying to do. But yeah, I guess the one that usually comes into my mind is some kind of reference to prehistoric man. That is kind of my thing I can't escape. Hey, look,
The hat's on your man, yeah.
the hat, the hat. Um, that's the one I can't really escape. So you'll find primates in general. So there's gorillas and baboons and everything across chimps across the whole of our back catalogue. I don't know if it made it onto this one. It probably did. I mean, you've got Littlefoot the dinosaur is very briefly mentioned. Yeah, so that's a big one for me. Is that so? I guess yeah. I don't know if I managed to avoid it on this one. And I tend to like the word happening quite a lot, so I try and avoid using that. It's got a great sound. I did it to death on Cough Cough a long time ago, but it still wants me to use it.
What do you think that's just like not so much happening, but the prehistoric nature and monkeys and stuff? Do you think that
Mhm.
is that just because it's an interest?
It's an interest that has a definite origin. My dad is a sort of semi-amateur professional archaeologist,
Right.
and he collects fossils, but he also collects skulls. So our house growing up was full to the brim with animal skulls, and some human ones as well. Um, and he would collect roadkill and take the heads and boil them up and get the skulls out and stuff like this when we were kids. So that's definitely where all that comes from. I think of deep connection with evolution and man's animal side comes from my dad, and that's got into my music in a massive way. And it's really my main message. If you put all my songs in a together and said, what is this guy trying to say? I think it's probably that we are animals and we shouldn't forget it, which is not something I consciously sit down and try and write songs about, but it just comes out through my worldview and through my upbringing, I think.
Mm. Also, on that's really interesting, and the fact that it's not just come from nowhere;
No,
it's got an actual
yeah, yeah, it does.
story to it. On the last record, there was a small percentage of lyrical output that came from
Yeah,
the AI program. I'm sure you've talked about this to death. And it was the case of you'd fed it 4chan forum posts, T's and C's for LinkedIn, Confucius teachings and stuff like that.
yeah,
It was a bit ahead of the curve in a way. And
yeah.
obviously, I'm sure that it was also right about on time for different, areas where AI had obviously already been used a lot. What are your thoughts on creative industries and the way things are with AI now? The way the person on the street is talking about it, rather than just possibly when the last record came out,
hmm
something that was possibly not as prevalent.
Yeah, I think we did just manage to grab it just before it became completely widespread, but it was kind of comically in its infancy compared to what can be done with it now. Like the cover of the album, it looks terrible compared to what you can create now. Um, but at the time, that was the best thing you could do. I mean, there's a lot of chatter about what AI is going to do to everyone's jobs. Obviously, the creative industry, perhaps most noticeably because of famous people or whatever. I haven't tried to stay on the very forefront of any of it, but I've sort of looked in here and there with some of the stuff that I do, and I think it's a pretty good tool, but it doesn't feel like it's replaced anything that I personally do. It's enhanced some of the things I do. I've used it in like Photoshop, for example. There's some cool stuff going on there, and that got it to write some code for me to use in a animation thing. It doesn't feel scary. It just feels like a great, really advanced tool. In the right hands, you can make some cool shit with it, but it's in the wrong hands, you just make a load of bollocks with it. And I'm not really worried about those people who are gonna use it to make a load of bollocks with, because it doesn't actually solve some of the major creative problems that the creative person has, which is how do you communicate with your audience, for example. It can't really help you with that. It can just sort of go, well, this is how 6 million people used it. Do you want to do exactly the same thing as them or a slight variation on it? And it's like, well, not really. Without getting into specifics, it feels like a good place to bounce ideas off, but it's not a replacement for anything that I've seen so far. Maybe that'll change.
I remember around the time of the last record where a friend got in touch and was like, "Oh, the whole record is written on ChatGPT," and I was like, "Fucking hell, that sounds awful."
Absolutely not.
Yeah, yeah, and I imagine that might have come up before, but that's interesting that like a tool to utilize in that respect. Is it something that you think you might revisit in the future, or?
I don't think so. I think we made our little statement, which we didn't even make. We used it right at the right time, got in just before everyone else. And I'm not that interested in it. I think I'll use it as a tool like everyone, but it's in no way something I wake up in the morning and think, "Ooh, I'm going to write a song with that." No way. It doesn't excite me at all. I might use it to help me with something, but no more than using a soft synth is helping me to hear a orchestra, that I can't go outside and hear. So yeah, it's just another tool at the moment, and it's an exciting one, and I do enjoy it. But it's like, yeah, whatever. It's not my first thought.
Yeah, that's good to know. With the new record, it's a run of top 10 albums on the bounce for you. And obviously, given the way Cold Reactor's gone, I can only assume that similar will follow, not to jinx it. But how different does it feel? I realized, compared to when Arc cracked the top 10, the way even music is consumed is completely
It
different.
is.
Given the way things work now, how mad was it to go from the top 10 when Art came around to possibly pushing through that now, given the way charts work and such?
Well, I've heard recently, because obviously we're talking about this quite a lot, that the charts are going to change later this year.
Right.
I don't know how true it is, but I've heard that they're going to be judged. At the moment, they're judged on sales and consumption, weighted 50-50. I'm probably wrong, so don't take this as read.
Sure.
But that means that if we really, really crack the whip in release week, then we can get a top 10. But they're going to change it so that it's just consumption. And when that happens, it'll just be Taylor Swift is number one every week. And the bands like us probably won't even chart in a way that you can see. We probably won't even make top 100 after this year. So we've enjoyed this particular period where we can like work our asses off and get into the top 10, top five even. But supposedly this might be the last time we manage it, which is a bit sad, but I don't really care.
Really, really sad in because obviously the charts aren't everything, but that is really sad in the way history's gone and with Top of the Pops and such.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
And
I
what you
mean,
were saying before about Black MIDI, it's great that the weird shit can be popular, but it's probably not going to be in the charts, unfortunately.
yeah. I mean, there's always a TikTok video that could go stratospheric if you're
Yeah,
post,
yeah,
post 40th birthday. You could get on
yeah.
that with the lads.
Yeah, good idea.
Finally, I was just going to touch on going back to Arc. Man Alive recently had a reissue as well. And you were quoted as saying a lot of the time you were writing about an imagined future for the world and how it all got started, which doesn't feel too dissimilar to this new record. Obviously, a lot has changed, since that first record came out with the way you are as people. and in the world itself. You had said that you were weirdos then and you're weirdos now for when that record came out. So, how is it within the camp now? Is it just that you boys are still weirdos, or?
Yeah, I think we're still weirdos, but we found our niche and we found our audience, and it obviously wasn't like that when we began. We were just trying to do something, and lots of people didn't know what to make of it, and they still don't. But a lot of people do, and we really love our fans, and we really appreciate that we can sort of do some of the stuff we do, and we don't have to think about trying to make it commercial. I mean, it's not like it's rampantly anti-commercial, the music we make, at all, but there isn't that thought dangling over our heads. We really do love what we're creating. We think it's good, and when they do as well, that's kind of awesome. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you don't love what you're doing creatively, then it's very depressing. But we're lucky enough to not be in that position.
Yeah, thank God.
Yeah.
Until you need to get past the Swiftie in the top 100.
Well, yeah, we'll do a collab with her.
I bet that would be amazing, to be fair.
I bet it would.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. Well, thanks very much. It's been great chatting.
Yeah, you too, man.
Yeah, when you do get the call from Swift, hopefully you'll still remember us.
Oh, what, you want to do a collaboration with her?
Oh, I'd love to do a collaboration. Not me.
Yeah.
If she wants to do a podcast, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay. I'll ask her.
Yeah, please do.